The spaceship Odyssey glided silently through the violet clouds of Zithera, its metal surface reflecting the soft light of two suns. Inside, human scientist Ethan Cole checked his instruments again, though everything was already stable. He had traveled far, thousands of light years from Earth, to meet an alien civilization that many humans only read about in history books. Zithera was said to be one of the most advanced planets in the galaxy, a world of shining cities, floating towers, and creatures with intelligence far beyond humans. But no amount of preparation could have readied him for the moment that awaited him. The spaceport opened like a grand mouth as the Odyssey docked. A team of Zitheran guides in flowing robes greeted the humans with graceful bows and melodic voices. Ethan noted their skin shimmered faintly under Zithera's sunlight, and their eyes glowed with colors he had never seen on Earth. He felt both awe and unease. Humans were explorers, but nothing in human history had prepared them for the elegance of a civilization that seemed to move in harmony with its environment, its cities alive as if they themselves were conscious. Ethan's heart beat faster as they approached the royal palace, a massive structure of silver and glass that floated above the crystalline riverbeds. Here he was told he would meet Princess Liara, the young heir to the Zitheran throne. His colleagues whispered excitedly about her intelligence and beauty. Some called her mysterious. Others said she was the kind of leader whose gaze could decide the fate of entire worlds. When the chamber doors opened, Ethan's first impression was that the room itself was a work of art. Light curved in impossible angles, bouncing off surfaces that seemed to flow like water. Standing at the center, framed by a large arch of golden metal, was Liara. She wore a long robe of deep blue that shimmered with tiny lights, like stars scattered across the night sky. Her posture was straight, regal, yet her eyes held a softness that contradicted the strength she projected. Ethan took a step forward, offering the traditional greeting he had practiced. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice steady despite the sudden nervousness that prickled his spine. "I am Ethan Cole, representing the human scientific delegation." Liara's eyes widened slightly. She froze. Her hands, which had been poised in front of her, remained motionless as if she had been suddenly turned into a statue. Ethan noticed the faint tremble in her shoulders, the way her breath seemed to hitch just for a moment. The guards flanking her straightened, sensing something unusual, but they made no move. Ethan felt a flicker of confusion. Had he said something wrong? Was there a cultural error he had made? He tried again, offering a small, polite bow. "It is an honor to meet you." Liara's eyes darted toward him and then away, her face pale under the soft lighting of the chamber. She did not speak. Her frozen posture suggested fear or perhaps recognition. Ethan's curiosity flared. He had expected the alien princess to be wary, but this was different. "Is something wrong, princess?"
One of the Zitheran aides asked gently, stepping forward.
Liara blinked rapidly and took a shaky breath. For a moment she looked human, not in appearance but in her very reaction. It was vulnerability, fleeting yet undeniable. Ethan, sensing that he should not press, kept his expression calm. "Perhaps this is just a formal greeting," he said softly. "I will take no offense." Liara nodded slowly, still avoiding his gaze. Her silence, however, only deepened the mystery. Ethan noticed a faint tug in her expression, as if some memory had been awakened, a memory she could not place. The court officials ushered the humans toward the seating area, a circle of floating chairs hovering above a polished floor. Ethan sat, glancing at Liara from the corner of his eye. She remained standing, observing him with a mix of curiosity and caution. She had not yet spoken a single word, and yet her presence filled the room with an unspoken tension. After a few minutes, a holographic projection appeared, displaying the history of Zithera. Ethan watched in amazement as the holograms shifted and turned, showing the evolution of the planet from its earliest days to its current technological marvels. But he could not take his eyes off Liara. Her hands twitched slightly when the hologram displayed a figure that looked almost human. She blinked rapidly and stepped back, her eyes wide. Ethan leaned slightly forward. He had seen enough alien records to know that humans had never been documented on Zithera, yet something in Liara's reaction told him that her shock was personal, not historical. After the presentation ended, Liara finally spoke, her voice soft and melodic. "Your appearance, it is unusual." Ethan tilted his head. "Unusual? I am a human, princess. Is that unexpected?" Liara looked down as if struggling to find the right words. No, it is more than unexpected. It is familiar. I cannot explain. Ethan's mind raced. Could there have been humans here before? Stories of forgotten explorers sometimes circulated in the galaxy, but nothing concrete existed. He considered asking more, but he sensed that Liara was hesitant to speak freely. Her reaction was instinctive, not controlled. He would need patience. The audience ended, and the delegation was led to their quarters. Ethan could not shake the feeling that something ancient had just stirred within Liara. He had come to Zythera expecting diplomacy and knowledge-sharing, yet he had found a mystery that might span centuries. The next morning, Ethan was summoned by Liara herself. She led him to a private garden, a space filled with glowing plants and streams of liquid light that wound between floating stones. Here she finally let her guard down. You must forgive my behavior yesterday, she said, her voice quieter now, almost afraid to disturb the delicate harmony of the garden. You are unlike anyone I have seen before. Something about you. I remember, though I should not. Ethan frowned. Remember? But we have never met. At least not in my lifetime. Liara shook her head, frustration in her eyes. I know, and yet, when I saw you, it was as if I had known you always. Something in me recognized you instantly. I cannot explain it. Perhaps it is a memory of my ancestors, or perhaps... Her voice trailed off. Ethan studied her carefully. He wanted to ask more, but he also knew that pushing her could close the door entirely. Instead, he said softly, Then perhaps I can help you remember. Perhaps together we can discover why. Liara's gaze met his, and for a moment she no longer seemed frozen. There was a spark of hope or curiosity there, mingled with caution. She nodded, a silent agreement. Ethan realized then that his mission had changed. He had not come to Zythera merely to study the planet. He had come to uncover a hidden past, a truth that even the royal family might have forgotten. And somehow that truth was connected to him. As the twin suns of Zythera rose higher, casting warm light across the garden, Ethan felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. The universe was vast, full of mysteries, but he had stumbled into one of the most profound, a connection between human and Zytheran that defied history, logic, and expectation. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the soft hum of Zythera's city outside his window. The sunlight glinted off the floating towers, reflecting in shades of gold and violet across the sky. He had barely slept. His mind kept returning to the princess and the strange recognition in her eyes. Something about their meeting seemed more than chance. He did not yet understand why Liara had frozen at his first sight, but he was determined to find out. After breakfast, Ethan received a message summoning him to the palace again. This time Liara requested a private meeting, away from the court, the guards, and curious advisors. When he arrived, she was already waiting in a quiet chamber filled with plants that glowed faintly in colors he had never seen. Their light reflected in her eyes, making her seem almost otherworldly. I want to understand, she said immediately, as though reading his thoughts. You appeared yesterday, and I felt something I cannot name. I fear it, yet I cannot ignore it. Tell me, Ethan, what is your family? Where do you come from? Ethan took a careful breath. I am from Earth, Princess. My family is human like me, scientists, explorers, thinkers. But I am not aware of anything that connects my family to Zythera. None of our records mention it. Liara studied him silently. Her hands were folded, but her body remained tense. And yet, when I saw you, it was as if I had known you for centuries. Ethan frowned. Centuries? Yes, Liara whispered, almost afraid of the words. Perhaps my ancestors knew humans. Or perhaps some part of me remembers something lost. Ethan nodded slowly. His curiosity flared. Humans had only recently begun exploring distant galaxies, and yet Liara spoke of centuries-old memories. Could there have been humans on Zythera long ago? And if so, why had the history been erased? I think, Ethan said carefully, that together we might discover the answer. Perhaps there is a record, something hidden. Liara's eyes widened. You would help me? Of course, Ethan replied, smiling. That is what humans do. We explore, we learn, and we solve puzzles. A small smile appeared on Liara's lips. Very well, but we must be careful, my people. Some of them do not welcome the past being revealed. For the next several days, Ethan and Liara met in secret. She showed him hidden chambers in the palace, rooms that contained old artifacts, holographic maps, and texts that had not been touched for decades. Ethan examined everything with a scientist's precision, while Liara watched him, sometimes with fascination, sometimes with fear. One evening, Liara led Ethan to a circular chamber that seemed to float in midair. At the center was a large holographic table displaying the history of Zythera. But here, the records were incomplete. Sections of the timeline had been erased. Ethan frowned, tracing the gaps with his fingers. "Here," Liara said softly. "This is where my ancestors interacted with beings not from Zythera. But all records were erased. I never knew why." Ethan leaned closer, studying the holograms. He noticed something that made his pulse quicken. A faint figure, human in appearance, standing among Zytherans in a long-forgotten ceremony. The figure's face was not clear, but the resemblance to him, even in silhouette, was uncanny. "Princess," Ethan said, pointing. This is a human. Long before my time. Could it be my ancestors?" Liara's eyes filled with wonder and fear. I think it must be, but it is forbidden to speak of it. My advisors erased it to prevent confusion, conflict, or worse." Ethan felt a chill. "Then perhaps that explains why you froze. You recognized me even without knowing why. Something in your memory, or your instincts, remembered my family." Liara's gaze softened. "It is possible. But even if it is true, the truth could change everything. It might disrupt our society or even start a conflict between humans and Zytherans." Ethan shook his head. "I do not want conflict. I want understanding. If our people can learn from each other, there is no danger, only growth." Liara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps you are right, but first we must find the source of this memory." They returned to the hidden chambers night after night, examining artifacts, old texts, and holographic messages. One day, Ethan discovered a small metal capsule tucked behind a false panel in the wall. He carefully removed it, wiping away centuries of dust. Inside was a holographic projector, still functional despite its age. Liara's hands trembled as Ethan activated it. A faint image appeared, flickering with light. It showed a human colony on Zythera, humans working alongside Zytherans, building structures and learning from each other. Ethan gasped. This was undeniable proof. Humans had lived on Zythera long ago. Liara's voice shook. This is my ancestors' record. They must have known humans. And somehow, this is connected to you." Ethan felt a deep awe. "So my family, my ancestors, were here? But why was it erased?" Liara looked down. "They feared that if humans returned, it would upset the balance of our world. They thought the knowledge might bring pride, anger, or even war. So they removed all proof and taught us to forget. Even I was not allowed to know." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of history. The universe was full of secrets, but this was personal. His very presence on Zythera was a living echo of the past. Over the following days, Liara and Ethan grew closer. Their conversations were not just about history. They shared ideas, dreams, and fears. Ethan told her stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and cities. Liara shared Zytheran legends, songs, and art. Though they came from different worlds, a subtle connection grew between them. A bond forged from curiosity and mutual respect. One evening, they walked through the palace gardens, the soft glow of alien plants lighting their path. Ethan paused, looking at Liara. "Princess, I know your people fear the past, but I do not. I believe humans and Zytherans can learn from it. We can grow together." Liara's eyes glistened. "I want to believe that. But my people, many of them will resist. Even my father might not accept it." Ethan smiled gently. "Then we take it step by step. Knowledge is a bridge, not a sword. We do not need permission from anyone to learn." Liara laughed softly, a sound like wind through crystal leaves. "You speak like a philosopher, Ethan Cole. Perhaps humans have a gift after all." That night, as Ethan returned to his quarters, he reflected on everything he had learned. The frozen look in Liara's eyes had been more than fear. It had been recognition, a spark from the distant past. He realized that history was alive, carried in the memories of those who came before, even if the world tried to erase it. And he also realized something else. The bond he was forming with Liara was more than friendship. It was a connection between two worlds, one that could either reshape Zythera forever or remain hidden in the shadows of memory. The next day, Liara invited him to see something extraordinary. A hidden library beneath the palace, containing ancient Zitharan knowledge, including texts about humans, forgotten technologies, and the alliances that had once existed. As they descended into the glowing halls, Ethan felt a thrill of discovery unlike anything he had experienced on Earth. "This," Liara whispered, "is the past we were not meant to remember." Ethan smiled. "Then we will remember it, together." As they walked deeper into the library, Ethan realized that the story of humans on Zithara was not just history, it was a bridge to the future. And perhaps with Liara's help, he could ensure that humans and Zitharans would learn from it, grow from it, and share a destiny that had been waiting centuries to be fulfilled. That night, as Zithara's twin moons rose in the sky, Ethan looked at Liara. She no longer seemed frozen, no longer hesitant. There was determination in her eyes, a willingness to face the truth. And for the first time, he felt certain that together, they could uncover the mysteries of the past without fear. But deep inside, Ethan knew there was more to learn, more secrets to uncover, and the truth they would find might be even more astonishing than either of them imagined. The hidden library beneath the palace was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Rows upon rows of glowing shelves curved through the air, holding books, scrolls, and holographic tablets that seemed to float in the soft light. Each artifact hummed with energy, as though the knowledge itself was alive. Liara guided him carefully, pointing to sections marked as Ancient Alliances and Forbidden History. "This library was sealed centuries ago," Liara whispered. "Only the royal family and trusted advisors were allowed here. Even I was not supposed to see it until now." Ethan ran his hand over a holographic tablet, activating a three-dimensional image of Zithara from hundreds of years ago. Cities floated in the skies, humans and Zitharans walking side by side, sharing knowledge and building machines far beyond Ethan's imagination. He gasped. This is incredible," he said. "Humans were here. They didn't just visit, they lived among your people." Liara nodded, her face pale with awe. "My ancestors. They welcomed humans once. There was cooperation, learning, and friendship. But then something happened. Something went wrong and they erased all evidence." Ethan leaned closer to a holographic figure resembling him. "And I'm related to these humans?" Liara's eyes glistened. "Yes, you are a descendant. That is why, when I saw you, I froze. My memory, or perhaps some ancient instinct, recognized your presence. You carry the echo of the humans who lived here long ago." Ethan felt a mix of awe and disbelief. The realization that he was part of a hidden history, a story erased for centuries, left him stunned. But why would they erase it? Why hide humans from your people? Liara led him to a circular chamber, where a massive holographic projection filled the room. It showed a council of Zitharan elders arguing, their faces tense. Ethan recognized the voices through the recording. They were discussing humans, but their words were chilling. "Their presence will disrupt our world. We cannot allow the past to interfere with our peace. Erasure is necessary. We must forget them, or our civilization may fracture." Ethan's jaw tightened. They feared humans. They feared what we might bring. Liara nodded solemnly. They feared pride, jealousy, war, even though humans had done nothing wrong. They made a choice to forget, thinking it safer. But some part of us, the blood, the memory, remains. For hours, Ethan and Liara examined the library's records. Holographic maps showed ancient human settlements on Zithara, places where humans had introduced technologies that advanced Zitharan cities for decades. Scrolls described humans teaching Zitharans about Earth's plants, water systems, and even basic philosophy. It was clear. Humans had been more than visitors. They had shaped the world. As Ethan explored, he found a small, sealed message, left by a human ancestor. He activated it, and a holographic figure appeared, a human in early 22nd century clothing, speaking directly to the future. "Whoever finds this message," the figure said, "know that our people came here in peace. Zithara welcomed us and we shared knowledge, but history will try to erase us. Remember our name. Protect our memory. The truth must live, even if it is hidden for centuries." Ethan's hands shook. This was more than history, it was a warning, a plea. He realized that his presence on Zithara now was no accident. He had come not only to explore, but to uncover what had been buried. Liara watched him quietly. "This message, It confirms what I felt. You are connected. The truth was waiting for you, Ethan, and now it is too late to hide it again. Ethan looked at her, confusion and determination mixing in his mind. Too late? He asked. Yes, Liara said softly. Because once the truth is known, it cannot be unseen. Once people realize humans lived here, your presence alone will stir curiosity, perhaps even fear. Your existence could change everything, for the better or for the worse. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood the weight of responsibility. Knowledge was power, but power without care could bring chaos. Yet he also felt a thrill, an opportunity to bridge worlds, to restore history, and to create understanding. Over the next several days, Ethan and Liara worked together in secret. They pieced together fragmented records, mapping ancient settlements, learning about shared technologies, and discovering Zitharan rituals influenced by human traditions. Ethan was amazed at how humans had left traces in Zitharan art, architecture, and even language. One evening, as they pored over a series of holographic maps, Liara turned to Ethan. There is one final secret, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Something my ancestors hid even from the royal family. Ethan leaned forward eagerly. What is it? Liara hesitated, then activated a hidden panel. A projection appeared, showing a human child centuries ago standing beside a young Zitharan leader. A girl who looked remarkably like Liara herself. The hologram depicted them laughing, learning, and sharing knowledge. Ethan's breath caught. That looks like you, Liara nodded. It is me or my ancestor. Humans once lived among us not just as visitors but as companions. My ancestors chose to hide this, fearing the world could not accept it, and that is why I froze when I saw you. You are a living reminder of that forgotten bond. Ethan felt a wave of awe. History was no longer just a record, it was alive, flowing through them both. He realized that he had stepped into a story centuries in the making, one that connected human and Zitharan destinies. The realization also brought a sense of urgency. Princess, he said, we cannot let this truth stay hidden. Humans and Zitharans, we can learn from it. We can restore this bond. It might take time, but it is worth it. Liara's eyes glistened. I want to believe that. But there will be resistance. The council, the elders, they will not accept this easily. Even my father may not understand. Ethan reached out, placing a reassuring hand on hers. Then we start small. Knowledge, understanding, and trust. That is how change begins. For the first time, Liara smiled fully, no longer frozen by fear or uncertainty. The spark of recognition had transformed into determination. Together, they would face the challenge of restoring history, bridging worlds and mending a connection that had been lost for centuries. As the twin moons of Zithara rose above the palace, Ethan and Liara sat among the glowing plants of the hidden library. The past had been revealed, the truth was known, and the future awaited their guidance. Ethan realized that while he had learned the truth too late to change history, he could still shape what came next. The humans who had once lived on Zithara had left behind not just memories but a responsibility, and now he and Liara were the ones entrusted to carry it forward. This is only the beginning, Ethan said softly, looking at Liara. The universe is vast, but we have a chance to restore what was lost together. Liara nodded, her eyes reflecting the light of the ancient holograms. Yes, together. And perhaps we can make the future better than the past. In that quiet, glowing chamber, the bond between human and Zitharan deepened. History had been hidden, but now it lived again, in memory, in knowledge, and in their hearts. And though the path ahead would be challenging, Ethan knew one thing with certainty. Humans and Zitharans were meant to share more than just the past. They were meant to build the future together. The revelation of humans' ancient presence on Zithara spread quickly, though not through the palace halls. Ethan and Liara worked quietly, aware that the council and the elders would resist any sudden disclosure. They began with small steps, sharing knowledge with trusted aides, reconstructing holographic records, and piecing together Zithara's forgotten human history. The palace gardens became their sanctuary. Under the soft glow of floating plants, Ethan demonstrated Earth's technologies and philosophies, simple inventions, ideas of cooperation, and ways humans and Zitharans could learn from each other. Liara listened, fascinated, then suggested ways to integrate these lessons into Zithara's culture without alarming the council. You know, Ethan said one evening. Humans have always thrived on curiosity. That's how we survived, how we explored. I think Zitherans are curious too. Maybe all we need is to show them that learning from the past does not mean danger. It means strength. Liara smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm light of the garden. You speak like a diplomat and a philosopher at once. Perhaps that is what we need. But the Council, they fear change, Ethan shrugged. Fear is natural, but fear disappears when knowledge replaces it. They began by organizing private exhibitions inviting select Zitherans to the hidden library. Holograms depicted humans working with Zitherans centuries ago, highlighting cooperation, shared technology, and mutual respect. Skepticism was expected. Some visitors whispered and exchanged doubtful glances, but others showed wonder and awe. One elder approached Ethan, his expression guarded. You claim these humans were here, yet no records exist in the official archives. How can we trust this? Ethan smiled. Because the evidence is here. Look at the technology, the structures, the messages left by your ancestors themselves. Humans did not hide, we were erased. But now the truth is alive. Liara stood beside him, her voice steady. We are not asking for blind belief. We are asking for open minds, for a chance to reconnect our peoples as it was meant to be. Over the next few weeks, the small exhibitions began to bear fruit. More Zitherans came, curious to see the forgotten past. They marveled at the holographic colonies, the lessons humans had taught centuries ago, and the clear signs of cooperation. Slowly, whispers of support began to circulate through the palace. Yet not all were pleased. Some elders complained that revealing humans' role could undermine Zithera's culture, weaken their authority, or invite outside interference. Liara faced intense pressure, her advisors urging her to seal the records once more. Ethan watched her carefully, seeing her inner struggle. You are not alone, princess, he said gently one night in the palace garden. History can be frightening, but it is also a gift. We can shape it responsibly. Liara looked at him, her eyes reflecting trust. You are right, Ethan, I cannot ignore this truth any longer. It is our duty to guide Zithera wisely, not to hide what was meant to be shared. With Ethan's encouragement, Liara called for a council meeting. The chamber was filled with the planet's most influential leaders, all eager and some wary to hear her speak. She presented the evidence carefully, holograms, artifacts, and messages from centuries past. She spoke of the humans who had lived on Zithera, their contributions and the lessons that could be learned from their partnership. Ethan stood beside her, offering insight from a human perspective. We come not to challenge Zithera, he said. We come to honor your past and to show that humans and Zitherans can share a future. Cooperation, not fear, will strengthen your civilization. There was silence. Some council members exchanged uneasy glances. Then one elder, a wise figure known for embracing knowledge, spoke. This is undeniable. The records, the holograms, I see it. Humans were here and their role was vital. Perhaps it is time we embrace what was hidden. A few others nodded slowly. Change, Ethan realized, always began with curiosity. The council's resistance was strong, but cracks had formed. Over the following days, Liara and Ethan worked to expand awareness beyond the palace. They invited scholars, engineers, and young leaders to study the forgotten human contributions. Workshops on ancient human technology and philosophy encouraged Zitherans to explore the past without fear. During one session, a young Zitheran engineer approached Ethan. Your people, they think differently. Their inventions, their approach to learning. It is fascinating. Why was this hidden? Ethan smiled. Fear. Fear that knowledge could be misused. But now we have a chance to use it wisely, to grow. Liara joined them, adding, the past is not just a story, it is a guide. Humans and Zitherans can learn from it together. As trust grew, more Zitherans embraced the lessons of history. Cities began integrating ideas from human technology, small improvements in energy use, communication, and environmental care. Humans' philosophies on cooperation, fairness, and exploration inspired young leaders to question old restrictions. Ethan noticed a change in Liara, too. She no longer hesitated, no longer feared backlash. She spoke openly in council meetings, guided scholars, and welcomed ideas from humans and Zitherans alike. The bond between them deepened, not romantic, but a partnership forged in trust and shared purpose. One evening, As they walked through a sky garden above the palace, Ethan asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if humans had never arrived?" Liara's eyes reflected the light of the floating plants. "I do, but history has its path. The humans came, then were forgotten, and now we have a chance to correct what was lost, to create something better." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. We may have learned the truth too late for the past, but not too late for the future." Liara smiled softly. "Yes, Ethan, and the future is what matters now." They spent weeks traveling to smaller cities and research centers across Zithera, showing humans' ancient impact and helping Zitherans apply the lessons. Schools adopted new teaching methods based on human philosophies. Engineers experimented with human-style problem-solving. Artists integrated human ideas into Zitheran culture. The influence was subtle but growing, like a river quietly reshaping the landscape. Even the council began to soften. Some members still hesitated, but more began to acknowledge the benefits. By embracing the past, Zithera had a chance to advance faster, wiser, and stronger than before. One morning, Liara turned to Ethan in the palace gardens. "Look at how far we've come. A few weeks ago you arrived and everything changed. You've not just helped me uncover history. You've helped us all embrace it." Ethan smiled, glancing at the twin suns rising above the horizon. History is full of lessons. Sometimes it just takes one person and one curious mind to remind the world. Liara laughed softly. "Or one human," she added teasingly. Ethan chuckled. "I'll take that credit. But it's really our combined effort. Humans and Zitherans together." Liara nodded. "Yes, together." The two of them stood in the quiet garden, the city alive beneath them. For the first time, Ethan felt the full weight and promise of what they had begun. Humans had been part of Zithera once, erased by fear. Now they were part of its present and its future. Ethan realized that HFY, the spirit of humans thriving, exploring and sharing knowledge, was alive not just in humans, but in the partnership he and Liara had formed. They were proof that cooperation, understanding, and courage could reshape worlds. As the twin moons rose that night, Ethan knew the journey was far from over. There would be challenges, skepticism, and resistance. But the bridge they were building between humans and Zitherans, past and future, was stronger than fear. The weeks that followed were full of activity. The hidden records, once forgotten and locked away, were now slowly being shared with trusted Zitherans across the planet. Schools incorporated lessons about humans' ancient contributions. Engineers experimented with old human technology, adapting it to Zithera's advanced systems. Artists and writers began creating works inspired by the human presence long ago. The past was no longer a secret. It was a guiding light for the future. Princess Liara stood in the palace gardens one morning, overlooking a city that shimmered beneath the twin suns. Her expression was calm, determined, and full of pride. The weight of centuries of secrecy had begun to lift, and she felt a sense of hope she had never known before. Humans, once erased from Zitheran history, were being welcomed back into the story. Ethan joined her, carrying a small holographic tablet showing the latest progress from several research centers across the planet. "Look at this," he said, smiling. "Cities are implementing lessons from human technology. Schools are teaching human philosophies, and even young leaders are using ideas from the past to solve current problems." "It's amazing," Liara smiled, glancing at him. "It is. But it is not just the lessons. They are learning humility, curiosity, and cooperation. That is far more important than the knowledge itself." Ethan nodded. "That's the spirit of humans. Exploration, understanding, growth. I always believed we could make a difference, even here. But seeing it happen, it's better than I imagined." Their conversation was interrupted by a message from the council. Liara had requested an official meeting to formalize humans' role in Zithera's society. The council had been hesitant at first, but the overwhelming positive response from the people and scholars had shifted opinion. It was time to make the change official. In the Grand Council chamber, Liara stood tall as she addressed the leaders. Ethan stood beside her, not as a visitor but as a representative of humans, a bridge between the two worlds. Holograms displayed centuries-old human settlements, the messages from Ethan's ancestors, and the collaborative projects that were already transforming Zithera. "Esteemed council members," Liara began, her voice steady. "For centuries, a part of our history has been hidden. Humans once lived among us, shared their knowledge, and shaped Zithera in ways we are only now beginning to understand. Their presence was erased from our records out of fear, but the truth cannot remain hidden forever. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humans are part of our past, and they can be part of our future. By acknowledging their contributions and working together, we strengthen our society, our culture, and our understanding of the universe. Ethan added, his voice calm but confident. I did not come here to disrupt Zithera. I came to learn, to understand, and to honor the shared history between our peoples. The lessons of the past can guide us to a future built on trust, knowledge, and cooperation. The chamber was silent. Some council members exchanged skeptical looks, but others were visibly moved. Finally, the elder who had spoken in support during the early exhibitions rose. Princess Liara, Ethan Cole, he said, your efforts have shown that humans' presence need not threaten us. Instead, it strengthens us. We acknowledge the contributions of humans in our past and welcome their presence in our future. Let history be remembered and let cooperation guide our path forward. A murmur of agreement swept through the chamber. One by one, more council members stood, nodding in support. By the end of the session, the council had officially recognized humans as part of Zitheran heritage and society. Liara turned to Ethan, a bright smile on her face. We did it, she whispered. The past is acknowledged and the future is open. Ethan grinned. Yes, and it is only the beginning. Over the next few months, life on Zithera began to transform. Humans who had arrived with the diplomatic mission were now welcomed as collaborators. Schools taught human philosophies alongside Zitheran wisdom. Engineers and scientists worked together, combining centuries of Zitheran innovation with human creativity. The planet became a hub of knowledge, innovation, and cooperation. Ethan and Liara traveled together frequently, visiting cities, research centers, and schools. Everywhere they went, humans and Zitherans shared ideas, exchanged knowledge, and learned from each other. The bond between the two species grew stronger each day. One evening, as they walked through a garden suspended high above the city, Liara turned to Ethan. Do you ever think about what would have happened if your ancestors had never come? Ethan smiled. I do. But history has a way of finding its path. Humans came, they were forgotten, and now we have a chance to restore the connection. The past may have been lost, but the future is ours to build. Liara nodded, and we will build it together. As they continued walking, Ethan noticed children playing nearby. Zitheran children learning Earth games and humans teaching their customs. Young leaders discussed projects inspired by human ingenuity. Artists created sculptures and paintings blending human and Zitheran culture. The seeds of cooperation and curiosity had taken root, and they were growing fast. Ethan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had learned the truth too late to change the past, but he had arrived in time to shape the future. The frozen look in Liara's eyes from their first meeting had disappeared, replaced by determination, curiosity, and hope. Together, they had brought humans and Zitherans closer than they had ever been in centuries. One night, as Zithera's twin moons rose, casting silver light across the floating towers, Ethan and Liara sat side by side in the palace garden. The planet below shimmered with life, knowledge, and cooperation. Liara spoke softly. Do you think humans and Zitherans can continue to work together without fear or conflict? Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and confident. Yes. Humans have always thrived on curiosity, exploration, and understanding. And Zitherans, your people are just as capable. Together, there is nothing we cannot achieve. Fear will fade when knowledge guides us. Liara smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. It feels like a new dawn. Ethan nodded. It is. The past taught us lessons, but the future is ours to create. They sat together in silence for a moment, watching the city below, each light a symbol of progress, understanding, and hope. The human story had been erased from Zithera for centuries, but now it was alive again, not in the shadows, but in the hearts, minds, and actions of the people. And somewhere deep within the palace library, the holographic message from Ethan's ancestor glowed softly, as if approving the new chapter in history. The truth must live, even if it is hidden for centuries. Ethan realized that the story of humans on Zithera was no longer a secret. It was a living, breathing part of the planet, shaping minds, inspiring creativity, and forging connections. Humans had arrived too late for the past, but perfectly in time for the future. Liara turned to Ethan, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. Thank you, Ethan, for believing, for discovering, and for guiding us. The past may have been hidden, but now the future is ours. Ethan smiled warmly. It was never just me, Liara. It was you, your people, and the desire to learn. Humans and Zitherans together, we can do anything. As the light of the moons bathed the palace in silver, Ethan and Liara watched over Zithera, knowing that history had been restored and a brighter, united future awaited. They had faced secrets, fear, and forgotten truths, and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to build a world where humans and Zitherans could thrive side by side. The frozen look that had once held Liara captive was gone. She smiled freely now, her eyes bright with understanding and hope. And Ethan understood that sometimes the truth may arrive too late for the past, but just in time to change the world. The adventure of rediscovery, cooperation, and unity was only beginning, and together humans and Zitherans would write the next chapter of their shared history.